Hello. I'm really glad you're here tonight. This hour is different from the rest of the day. It doesn't ask you to decide anything. It doesn't ask you to perform or explain or keep up. It simply invites you to lie still and let your thoughts move at their own pace. There's a particular kind of feeling that arrives later in life. Not sadness exactly, not happiness either. Something softer than both. Something that lives in the space between what you wished for and what you received. Between who you tried to be and who you actually became. Between the love you gave and the love you still carry inside you. Unclaimed, unspent, quietly waiting. Some people call it regret. But that word is too sharp, too accusatory, too much like blame directed at someone who was simply living the only life they had access to. What you feel on nights like this one, what rises when the room goes quiet and the day finally lets go of you, is something much gentler than regret. It's more like tenderness. Tenderness for the choices you made when you didn't yet know what you know now. Understanding for the person you were when those choices were made. Compassion for all the ways you were trying your best in a world that rarely offered you instructions and almost never offered you enough time. And underneath that tenderness, there is love. Softer than any love you've ever spoken aloud. Quieter than any love you've ever been given. A love that belongs to no single person, but to all of them, to every moment that mattered, to every version of yourself that tried. Tonight is for those feelings, the ones that don't have names, the ones that arrive only in the dark, only in the stillness, only when you've finally stopped moving long enough to hear them. So take a slow breath. Let your body soften into the bed beneath you. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Let your hands rest open at your sides. Feel the weight of the covers. Feel the darkness around you, gentle and unhurried. And before we begin, if this kind of honest, gentle reflection speaks to you, if these late-night thoughts feel like something you need, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Down in the comments, tell me where you're listening from tonight and what time it is where you are. There's something quietly beautiful about knowing we're all here together, scattered across different rooms, different cities, different stages of the same long human experience, but all of us lying in the dark tonight, holding the same gentle, tender, aching thoughts. So settle in, adjust your pillows, find a position that feels like rest, and know that for the next hour, you're not alone in whatever softness you're carrying, whatever understanding you've earned, whatever love still lives in you quietly, waiting to be acknowledged. Let's begin. The things you didn't say. You're lying here now, and the room is quiet, and something is surfacing. It always does at this hour, when the noise of the day falls away and the world stops asking things of you. The mind turns inward, gently, like a hand turning the pages of an old book, not searching urgently for anything, not needing to find or fix or resolve, just allowing what was always there to become visible again. Tonight what rises is soft, not painful the way it once might have been, not raw or urgent or demanding anything from you right now, just present, like an old song heard faintly from another room, familiar, a little aching, and somehow beautiful in a way that only things with age can be beautiful. You think about the things you didn't say. Not only the words you regret keeping silent out of cowardice or stubbornness or pride, though those are there too, and will sit with them. But first, the softer ones, the words you held back, not because you were afraid, but simply because you didn't know yet how much they needed to be said, because you assumed there would be time, because the moment never felt quite right, because love, when it's constant and daily, has a way of feeling like something that doesn't need to be announced. You think about someone who was simply there. For years, they were simply there. A parent who showed up every single day without recognition or applause. A sibling who checked in on ordinary Wednesdays, asking nothing, just present. A friend who came reliably, whose number you knew by heart, whose particular way of laughing you could hear even now if you closed your eyes and tried. A neighbor whose name you knew and whose presence you registered without ever truly pausing to notice what it meant to have them near. They were part of the fabric of your daily life, woven so deeply into the ordinary that you stopped seeing them the way you see something new. The way you stop seeing the trees outside your window. The way you stop hearing the hum of the refrigerator. The familiar becomes invisible. That's just how human attention works. But that invisibility carries a cost. And tonight, you feel it. You never told them what they meant to you. Not because you didn't know, not exactly, but because knowing something and saying it out loud are two entirely different things, requiring different muscles, different kinds of courage. And in the middle of a full and busy life, of children and work and errands and exhaustion and the thousand small urgencies of ordinary days, the saying always seemed like something you'd get to later, when you had the right words, when the moment was quieter, when there was more time. There is always going to be more time. That's what you believed. That's what most of us believe, right up until there isn't. You know this now in a way you couldn't have understood at 30. You understand it in your body, in the way you wake sometimes in the early hours and lie still and think about people who are no longer here to receive the things you meant to say. You wish you had said it, not in some grand speech, not dramatically or with ceremony, just simply and plainly, the way adults do when they've finally stopped being embarrassed by tenderness, when they've learned that love spoken aloud is not weakness, but possibly the only thing that genuinely lasts after everything else has faded. Just across a kitchen table, over a cup of something warm, on a phone call that might have seemed ordinary, but could have been made extraordinary by simply saying what was true. I see you. You matter to me. My life is better because you're in it. I'm glad you exist. I'm glad you're mine. These sentences, these ordinary, quietly enormous sentences. You didn't say them enough. You know that now. And lying here, you hold that awareness not as punishment, but as information, as something your older, wiser, quieter self is offering to the part of you that's still here, still present, still with people to say things to. Say it now, to whoever is still here, to whoever picks up when you call, to whoever sits across from you at meals. While there is still time, while the moment is still available, while the words can still land somewhere warm and living, say it. The choices that made you, the mind when it wanders at night, finds its way to Crossroads. Not always the dramatic ones, not only the moments of crisis or catastrophe where something external forced a decision you didn't feel ready to make. The quieter ones too, the barely visible forks in the road that appeared on ordinary weekday afternoons when you were tired and distracted and just trying to get through. The ones you didn't even recognize as choices until long after you'd already made them and moved on. You think about a path you didn't take, a career you circled around but never stepped into fully, a city you almost moved to. You can still picture it, the apartment you nearly rented, the version of your life that almost happened there. A relationship that might have gone differently if you'd been braver or more honest, or simply a slightly different person at that particular moment in time. A dream you carried carefully for years, and then slowly, without ceremony, without any formal goodbye, simply sat down somewhere and kept walking. You remember the feeling of some of those moments, the particular quality of uncertainty, the way the choice already felt made somewhere deep inside before your conscious mind had fully agreed. The way life keeps moving forward, whether you're standing still or not, whether you feel ready or not, whether you have the information you need or not. Life has never waited for you to be fully prepared, and it never will. Were those choices wrong? You don't believe so. Not most of them. Not when you look at them with honest eyes and a compassionate heart. You made them with what you had available to you at the time, with the understanding you developed up to that point in your life, with the fears that were real, even if they were sometimes unfounded, with the hopes that were genuine, even if they were sometimes naive, with the limitations that were genuinely real to you then, even if they appear different now from the distance of years. Hindsight is generous with clarity and stingy with compassion. It shows you exactly what was happening, but conveniently forgets to tell you what it felt like to be inside the moment, what it felt like to be 33 and overwhelmed by responsibilities you hadn't anticipated, to be 42 and tired in a way that sleep didn't fix, to be 50 and quietly uncertain about whether the life you were living was actually the one you'd meant to build, to be doing your best every single day in a life that nobody handed you instructions for and that often felt like more than you were equipped to handle. Your choices made sense to you when you made them, even the ones you'd revise if you could. They came from a real place inside a real person dealing with a real set of circumstances. That person deserves your understanding tonight, not your judgment. And those choices led you here, exactly here, to this specific life, this specific body of experience, this specific accumulation of love and loss and learning that is yours alone. Different choices would have led to a different life, perhaps better in some ways, perhaps worse in others, certainly different. But not this one. Not these particular people. Not these specific lessons. Not this exact, irreplaceable version of you. Your imperfect choices made you who you are. They were the material the life was built from. And the life, for all its complications, for all its gap between expectation and reality, the life was real and it was yours and it mattered. That deserves recognition. Not absolution and not a verdict, but simple recognition. You navigated forward through uncertainty and limitation and genuine difficulty. You made decisions with what you had. You kept choosing, kept moving, even when you didn't know what you were moving toward. That took something from you every day, and you gave it anyway. The love that was real. You think about love tonight, not the version from films or songs or the glossy, idealized picture of it you absorbed as a young person and then spent years trying to make real in an actual human life. The other kind, the quiet kind, the ordinary kind that doesn't announce itself and doesn't require an audience. You think about someone making you breakfast on a morning when you were sick and couldn't ask for help. The particular sound of the kettle, the way they put the glass of water on the nightstand, exactly where you'd reach for it without thinking. Not because you'd asked, not because they needed credit for it, just quietly, practically, doing the thing that needed doing, because you needed it. That was love. You think about a hand on your shoulder at a moment when the world felt like it was dissolving. No words, no advice, no attempt to fix what couldn't be fixed. Just the weight of someone choosing to stand close to you, choosing to stay in the uncomfortable space, rather than retreating to safer distance. Just presence. Just that specific, irreplaceable, human gesture of, I am here and I am not leaving. That was love. You think about a conversation that lasted until 2 a.m. when both of you should have been sleeping, sitting somewhere warm and ordinary, a kitchen, a porch, a car parked outside because neither of you wanted the conversation to end, talking about things you'd never said out loud before, things you didn't even know you thought until they surfaced in that unguarded, generous space between two people who trusted each other enough to be honest. Both of you tired, both of you staying anyway. That was love. You think about apologies received years after they were needed, long overdue, clumsy in the offering, maybe arriving at a moment when you'd already done most of the grieving and rebuilt yourself around the wound, but offered. Someone looked at what they'd done, really looked with honest eyes, and they found the words, and they came back. That required something from them. That required a kind of courage that's easy to dismiss, but genuinely shouldn't be. That was love too. You have been loved in ways that didn't look like love at the time, in the patience extended to you when you were at your most difficult, in the people who stayed when you tested, consciously or not, whether they would, in the returning again and again of people who could have given up on you and chose not to, not because they had to, because they valued you, because something in them decided you were worth the difficulty, worth the continuity, worth the choosing. You were worth it to someone. You were worth the effort and the waiting and the returning. You were worth being chosen again and again in small, unobserved, ordinary moments that nobody was celebrating. You were worth it. Lie with that for a moment. Let it settle. Let it be simply, quietly true. The ways you loved back. Now turn it the other direction, because the love was not only received, you gave it too. In your own imperfect, human, sometimes confused and sometimes fiercely certain way. You loved people, you tried, and even when the trying came out wrong, even when it arrived too late, or landed sideways, or wasn't the form they needed. It was genuine. Your love was real. You loved with worry. All those times you lay awake listening for a sound that would confirm someone was safe. All those calls you made that probably felt like pressure to the person receiving them. All that watching and checking and asking too many questions. That anxious, hovering, sometimes suffocating form of love that came entirely from caring so much it frightened you. You were afraid because you loved. The love was the source of the fear. That's different from fear that comes from not caring, from indifference, from wanting to control rather than protect. You loved through sacrifice. The things you gave up quietly and didn't mention. The dreams you folded carefully and set aside because someone else needed more space right then. The time spent, the opportunities not taken, the choices made toward others rather than toward yourself. These sacrifices were real. They cost you something, and most of them were made without resentment, or with resentment that you worked through privately because the love was larger than the cost. You loved through repair, through the times you went back after an argument and said, "I'm sorry, I was wrong, I said something I shouldn't have," even when part of you still felt partially justified, even when the apology required swallowing something that wanted to stay down. Through the choosing of the relationship over being right, through the choosing of the person over the position. That kind of repair takes more than people acknowledge. It takes the willingness to value connection more than victory. And that's not a small thing. You loved through letting go. This is the kind of love that gets the least recognition because it looks from the outside like absence, like not being involved, like not caring. But you know what it actually was. It was trusting someone enough to let them make their own choices, standing back when everything in you wanted to intervene, because you'd already said what you had to say, and now it was theirs to live. That kind of love requires restraint and trust and an enormous, quiet courage. It means caring about someone's growth more than you care about your own comfort. All of it counts. Every imperfect attempt at connection, every halting expression of care, every moment you tried even when you failed, even when the love came out sideways and created confusion instead of comfort. Love doesn't require perfection to be real. It requires only the genuine turning of your attention toward another person, the choosing of them, the continuing to choose them. You did that through difficulty and change and the inevitable disappointments that come with every real relationship. You kept choosing people. That's the whole thing, actually. That's what love is. The years that moved quickly. You couldn't have known when you were young how fast it would go. People told you. Older people looked at you with that particular expression, fond and a little sad, and quietly knowing. And they said things like, "Treasure this," like it passes so quickly, like you won't believe how fast. And you heard them, you nodded, you thought you understood. You didn't. You couldn't. That understanding is something that can only be earned by living through the thing itself, by finding yourself suddenly on the other side of what once felt like an endless stretch of time, by realizing with a strange, slow shock that the years you thought you were still living are already behind you. Now you understand. You feel it not just as a thought, but as something in your body, something in the way you lie here at night, and the quietness feels different than it used to. Heavier, somehow, more layered, full of things that used to be present and aren't anymore. You remember specific mornings that felt completely ordinary while you were inside them. The quality of light in a kitchen that no longer exists the way it did then. The sound of a voice you would give a great deal to hear again. The feeling of a hand you used to reach for without thinking, that you cannot reach for now. These memories arrive without warning. They surface in the smell of something cooking, in the weight of a familiar fabric, in the particular angle of late afternoon sun. And for a moment, just a moment, everything rushes back. The whole texture of another era, vivid and close and already receding as you try to hold it. You were there. You lived those ordinary moments. Even the ones that didn't seem worth keeping. Even the evenings that were just evenings. The meals that were just meals. The drives you took without thinking. You were present for all of it. And all of it is part of what you carry now. Part of the deep, irreplaceable texture of a life that only you lived exactly this way. No one else experienced your life from the inside. No one else felt what you felt in those specific rooms with those specific people at those specific moments. That's yours. Entirely, permanently, beautifully yours. And the fact that time moved quickly doesn't diminish it. It makes it precious. It makes every remaining day something worth noticing. The things you would do differently. There's a version of regret that harms, that loops and accuses and pulls you back into old pain without offering any light at the end of it. That's not what tonight is for. That's not what any of this is for. But there's another kind, softer. The kind that's really just wisdom in honest clothes. The kind that says, now I can see something I couldn't see then. Not as an accusation, but as a clear-eyed recognition, as the natural earned perspective of someone who has lived long enough to look backward with both honesty and grace. You would be more patient with the people who needed more time than you were willing to give, with the slow, uncontrollable pace of things that couldn't be rushed no matter how much you wanted them to be, with yourself on the days when you were struggling and didn't have the language yet to recognize that struggling was what was happening. You would extend more grace to the younger, less formed, genuinely less equipped version of yourself who was doing difficult things without adequate preparation and often without adequate support. You would listen more. You would let people finish their sentences instead of preparing your response while they were still speaking. You would sit longer in conversations without checking the time. You would ask the questions that actually mattered about what someone was afraid of, about what they needed, about what they were hoping for, instead of staying safely in the comfortable shallows. You would have been more curious about the interior lives of the people around you. You would worry less. Not because the worry didn't come from love. Most of it did. But because the worrying consumed enormous amounts of your presence and delivered almost nothing in return. The things you worried about most either never happened or resolved themselves in ways your anxious mind could never have anticipated. You would give those hours back to actual living. You would say, "I love you more," without ceremony, without saving it for the right moment or the perfect wording. You would say it on ordinary Tuesdays and unremarkable evenings and phone calls that had no particular occasion. You would say it to the people who needed to hear it most. You would say it early and often and without embarrassment. These aren't condemnations. They are simply what you've learned. And the fact that you can name them clearly, with compassion for the person who was still learning, is itself evidence of growth. You didn't know then what you know now. That's not failure. That's just the nature of a life lived forward. The grace of imperfection. You were never going to do any of this perfectly. Not one part of it. Not the loving, which requires you to be consistently available and emotionally generous in a world that is constantly depleting. Not the parenting, which is simply impossible to do without imperfection, because it demands superhuman consistency from human beings who are tired and scared and figuring it out in real time. Not the friendships, which require ongoing attention in a life that keeps crowding out the time for ongoing attention. Not any of it. You knew this at some level, intellectually, but knowing it and actually living in the grace of it, not using imperfection as an excuse, but truly releasing yourself from standards that no human being was ever going to meet. That is different work. That's the deep, continuing, lifelong work. And tonight you're doing it. Lying here without trying to fix anything, without reviewing the list of improvements, without the harsh voice that catalogues what you got wrong. Just resting in the reality of a life fully and genuinely lived by someone who was doing their sincere best in every season, even when their best was frightened, even when their best was insufficient, even when their best still wasn't enough for the people they loved and themselves. The carrying of that, the awareness of it, means you know it mattered. It means you're paying honest attention. It means you're the kind of person who holds themselves accountable, not through cruelty, but through genuine care. That is different from self-punishment. That is integrity. That is a person who takes their own life seriously enough to look at it clearly. You're allowed to rest in the imperfection now. You've earned that rest. You've been earning it your whole life. One honest, trying, imperfect day at a time. The night is quiet. The covers are warm. Your body is heavier now, settling, and the thoughts are still moving, slowly, gently, like water, finding its own level. There is more to hold tonight, more to remember, more to honor, more softness waiting in the second half of this hour, when the night goes deeper and the heart opens further and the love beneath everything finally speaks without hesitation. But for now, breathe. Stay here. Let this first part settle into you like something true. You are held tonight by the dark and the quiet and the long, full, irreplaceable fact of your life. Rest in that. The relationships that changed you. The night has grown deeper now. The first part of this hour moved through the easier territory, the things unsaid, the choices made, the love given and received in its quiet, ordinary forms. But now the night asks more of you. Now it asks you to go further, into the places that still carry some tenderness when you press on them, into the relationships that didn't end simply or cleanly, into the people who changed you in ways you're still discovering years later, in the middle of an otherwise unremarkable Tuesday, or in a moment exactly like this one, lying still in the dark with nothing to distract you from what's true. You think about the relationship that cost you the most. You know which one it is. It rose immediately when you read that sentence. You didn't have to search for it. It's always been there, just beneath the surface, patient and quiet, waiting for the stillness that lets it speak. Maybe it was a marriage that ended. Not dramatically, not with a single shattering moment, but slowly, the way old wood deteriorates. Not broken suddenly, but worn down gradually by weather and time and the accumulation of small, unaddressed damages. You watched it change. You felt yourself change alongside it. And there came a point, a quiet and terrible point, when you looked across a room at someone you had once loved with your whole heart and felt the distance between you like a physical thing, like a country, like something that would require more than either of you had left to cross. Or maybe it was a friendship that simply ended without resolution, without a fight, without a proper goodbye. Just a gradual silencing of messages returned less and less promptly, meetings rescheduled and then not rescheduled at all. A slow, mutual retreat back into separate lives until one day you realized months had passed and you didn't know how they were anymore, and the thought of reaching out felt both necessary and impossibly complicated. Or maybe it was a parent, the complicated, layered, lifelong relationship with someone who shaped everything about you, your fears, your patterns, your automatic responses to stress and love and conflict, and from whom you spent decades trying to establish yourself as a separate, autonomous person. Someone you loved and resented and needed and wanted distance from. Sometimes all in the same afternoon. Someone whose approval you sought even when you'd stopped believing it mattered. Someone whose limitations hurt you specifically because you needed them to be more capable than they were. These relationships, the complicated ones, the ones that didn't resolve into clean narratives, they are not failures. They are the evidence of having loved genuinely and at depth. Simple relationships don't leave marks like this. Only the ones that truly mattered do. Only the ones where something real was at stake. You carry the marks of those relationships tonight, not as wounds, though they were wounds once. Now they're something more like features, permanent alterations in the landscape of who you are. Evidence of a life lived in real contact with other real people, not safely behind glass, not managed from a careful distance, but genuinely and vulnerably close. That closeness cost you, and it also gave you everything worth having. The forgiveness you're still learning. There are two kinds of forgiveness that occupy the late-night mind. One is forgiving others. The other is forgiving yourself. And if you're honest tonight, really honest, in the way this dark and quiet hour makes possible, you'll recognize that the second one is harder. It has always been harder. You've done some of the work of forgiving others, Not all of it. Some of it you're still in the middle of, still untangling. There may be one or two people whose names you cannot yet say without feeling something difficult move through your chest. That's allowed. Forgiveness is not a switch. It's a direction, a practice, a slow, ongoing process of choosing again and again not to let the injury continue to define what's possible for you. You don't have to have arrived at complete forgiveness tonight. You only have to still be moving in that direction. But the self-forgiveness, that's where so many people get stuck. That's where the night finds you, still holding things you've been holding for decades. Mistakes made long ago that you've never fully released. Moments of cruelty, however minor, that you revisit with a harshness you would never apply to anyone else. Failures that you've long since grown beyond, but that you continue to carry, like heavy objects you forgot to set down, like penalties that never officially end. You said something unkind once, maybe to someone who deserved your patience instead, maybe to someone who was already struggling and didn't need the weight of your frustration added to what they were carrying. You remember the look on their face, or the silence on the other end of the phone, or the way the room changed. And you've carried that moment. You've returned to it more times than you can count, wishing you could reach back and say the other thing, the gentler thing, the true thing. You made a choice once that hurt someone you loved, not from cruelty, from weakness maybe, or fear, or simple human exhaustion. But it had consequences that rippled forward in ways you didn't fully anticipate. And you've watched those consequences. You've lived alongside the damage your moment of weakness created. And you've judged yourself for it, privately and relentlessly, in moments exactly like this one. Here is what you need to hear tonight. You are not the worst moment you have ever produced. You are not the unkind word or the wrong choice or the failure of nerve on the day courage was required. You are the whole of it, the whole long, complicated, genuine, trying, learning, loving whole of it. And the whole of it contains, alongside every mistake, every moment you did something right, every time you showed up when it was difficult, every time you chose love when resentment would have been easier, every time you tried again after failing, every time you stayed. The person who made those mistakes was real and was struggling and was doing their best with what they had in that moment. That person needed grace. They deserved grace. You deserve to extend it now, retroactively, across the years, to the person you were on the days when you weren't your best self. Forgive yourself tonight. Not because what happened didn't matter, not because the harm wasn't real, but because the punishment you've assigned yourself has long since exceeded anything proportionate. Because you have learned what those moments had to teach you. Because carrying them indefinitely does not repair them, does not restore what was damaged, does not help anyone. Because the most useful thing you can do with those mistakes now is to let them inform how you live going forward, rather than weigh down the living of it. You are forgiven, not by some external authority, by you, by the older, wiser, more compassionate version of yourself who understands now what you couldn't understand then, who extends to the younger, struggling, less equipped version of yourself the same tenderness you would extend without hesitation to any other human being who is simply doing their best. Let that be enough. Let it be enough tonight. The person you became. Somewhere along the way, without a formal announcement, without a ceremony or a graduation, you became someone you couldn't have predicted when you were young. You think about that younger version of yourself. Genuinely think about them. The specific quality of their hope, the particular texture of their fears, the things they were absolutely certain about that turned out to be wrong, the things they doubted about themselves that turned out to be exactly the qualities that carried them through. That young person had ideas about who they were going to become, about what the future looked like, about what success meant, what love required, what a good life was made of. Some of those ideas survived contact with reality and proved to be true. Others dissolved so completely that you can barely remember holding them. And some of the things you are now, the best things, the things you're most quietly proud of, were things that young person never anticipated at all. Things that emerged from difficulty, things that were forged specifically in the fires of the life you actually lived, rather than the life you planned. You became more compassionate than you were. Not instantly, not easily, but through the slow accumulation of hard experiences that taught you, repeatedly and sometimes painfully, that people are more complicated than they appear, that suffering takes forms you can't always see, that everyone is carrying something, that judgment is almost always premature and usually wrong. You became someone who knows this not as a concept but as a lived truth, and that knowledge softened you in ways that were necessary and good. You became more honest than you were. Also, not easily. Honesty in youth is often confused with bluntness, with saying the sharp thing because you can, with mistaking tactlessness for authenticity. Genuine honesty, the kind that tells the truth from a place of care, that speaks difficult things gently, that is willing to be honest about its own uncertainties and limitations. That is something you grew into, something the years build in you through the repeated experience of what happens when truth is withheld and what becomes possible when it's offered with love. You became more patient, not perfectly patient, not consistently patient, but more. You learn that most things unfold at their own pace, regardless of your preference, and that fighting that pace is exhausting and largely pointless. You learn to wait, to trust, to allow. These are skills that cannot be taught in youth, because youth doesn't believe it needs them. You earn them the only way they can be earned, by needing them. And you became more loving. This might be the quietest transformation and the most profound. Life, when it's lived honestly and openly, tends to expand the heart rather than close it, even when the expansion is painful. You have loved more people, more deeply, more honestly than you could have loved as a young person. Your capacity for it grew because it was exercised, because you kept turning toward people despite the risk, because love kept asking things of you and you kept saying yes. This is who you became, not who you planned to be, but someone real. Someone shaped by genuine experience. Someone who earned their way to this moment through decades of honest living. That person lying here tonight in the dark, that is someone worth being. The quiet gifts. There were gifts in this life that arrived without announcement, without wrapping, without anyone pointing at them and saying, "Here, receive this. This is something precious." They arrived in plain forms, in the middle of ordinary circumstances, and many of them you only recognize as gifts now from the distance of years. The gift of a friendship that was simply easy, that required nothing complicated, that existed without drama or maintenance, or the constant negotiation of feelings that some relationships require. Someone who knew you well enough to not need explaining. Someone you could sit with in comfortable silence. Someone whose company felt like rest. If you had this, even once, even briefly, you were given something not everyone receives. The gift of work that mattered to you. Not glamorous, necessarily. Not celebrated. Maybe not particularly well compensated, but work that connected to something real, that used some genuine part of you, that left you at the end of a day tired in the satisfying way rather than the hollow way. If you experience this, even in part, even intermittently, even only in certain seasons of your working life, that was a gift. Many people move through decades of labor without ever touching it. The gift of being known. Truly known by at least one person. Not the surface version of you that gets presented to the world, but the actual interior version. The complicated one. The one with contradictions and fears and private opinions and the things you've never said in public. If someone knew that person, if someone saw all of that and stayed and loved you in full knowledge of what they were loving, you received something extraordinary, something that many people spend their entire lives hoping for and never finding. The gift of enough. Not abundance, necessarily. Not excess. But enough. Enough warmth. Enough safety. Enough nourishment. Enough love to survive on. If you had enough, and in enough ways you did, that is worth sitting with. Worth acknowledging. Worth genuine gratitude tonight. In the dark, where gratitude doesn't have to perform itself for anyone, but can simply be felt, quietly and completely and without condition. The gift of nature at the right moment. The specific experience of standing outside in the world and feeling it. Feeling the wind and the light and the particular beauty of a specific hour in a specific season. The way certain mornings have a quality that makes everything feel briefly possible. The way water moves. The way snow changes the sound of the world. The way a sunset on a difficult day can remind you, without words, that beauty exists independently of your circumstances and will continue to exist regardless of what you're going through. These gifts found you. Not all of them, not all at once, and some of them only in glimpses, but they found you, and you are alive to receive them. You are here. That is not nothing. That is, in the end, the whole gift. You are here for your own life. You are present for at least some of it. And the parts you were present for, the parts where you were genuinely awake and open and available to what was happening, those parts are yours forever. The love that remains. Here is something the night wants you to understand. Love does not end when the relationship that carried it changes form. It doesn't disappear when someone dies. It doesn't dissolve when a marriage ends or a friendship fades or circumstances separate two people who once meant everything to each other. Love is not contained by the structure that expressed it. When the structure changes, the love remains. It lives somewhere in you, quiet and permanent, neither requiring anything from the outside world nor diminishing without it. You carry people inside you who are no longer in your life. They live there in the specific way you carry yourself sometimes, in the things they said that became part of how you think, in the standards they held you to that became part of how you hold yourself, in the love they gave you that became part of your capacity to love others. They shaped you. They are in you. That is a form of permanence that nothing can take. You think about your mother or your father or both. You think about the way they existed in the world, their specific gestures, the particular phrases they used, the things they were afraid of, the things they hoped for you, the way they showed love, even when the showing was imperfect or confusing or occasionally harmful. Even the difficult things they gave you became part of the material you were built from. You came from them. They live in you. Tonight, lying here, you can feel that. The line between you and the people who made you is thinner than it appears. They are not as gone as absence makes them seem. You think about someone you have loved and lost, not necessarily to death. Sometimes loss takes other forms. The end of a marriage, the slow dissolution of a friendship, the estrangement from a family member that nobody fully planned and nobody quite knows how to undo. The person is still alive somewhere in the world, living their life, but they are no longer in yours, and the love you had for them didn't become hatred when things ended. It became something more complex, a mixture of grief and gratitude, and unresolved tenderness, a love that has nowhere to go now and so lives quietly inside you, waiting for nothing, simply present. That love is not a mistake. It is not wasted. The love you gave to people who are no longer near you was not spent in vain simply because the relationship it lived in ended. It was real while it was alive. It shaped both of you. It added something to the world that wasn't there before two specific people turned toward each other. That matters independently of how the story ended. The ending doesn't reach backward and unmake what was real and the love you still carry. For people living and dead, present and absent, reachable and beyond reach, that love is part of your wholeness tonight. It means you were capable of it, that you opened yourself enough to let people in deeply, that you were not defended against the whole of life, that you lived with your heart genuinely available. That is the best thing a person can do. That is perhaps the whole point. The softness of now. The night is at its deepest now. The hour when the world is most completely still and the darkness is most gentle and the body is heaviest with the accumulated weight of everything held and examined and slowly released. You're still here, still breathing, still present in this bed, in this room, in this particular version of your life that is the only version that has ever actually existed. Not the one you planned, not the one you feared, not the alternative version that lives in the imagination and is always slightly better or slightly worse than the real one. This one, the actual one, the one you've been living from the inside since the beginning, and from the inside, right now, tonight. How does it feel? Not how it should feel, not how you'd like it to feel in the best version of this moment, how it actually feels, here, in the honest dark, where pretending costs too much and isn't worth the effort anyway. It feels heavy, probably, full, the way something feels when it carries a great deal. Not crushed by the weight, but weighted by it. Substantial, real, like a book with many chapters, dog-eared and annotated, and worn at the spine from being opened so many times. It feels tender, the particular tenderness of something that has been through a great deal and survived. Not hardened by the surviving, softened, opened, made more permeable to beauty and more honest about pain and more capable of sitting with both without needing to rush toward resolution. It feels underneath everything, underneath the soft regret and the unfinished business and the people missed and the things unsaid and the choices that still occasionally revisit you in the dark. It feels like love. Beneath all of it, running through all of it, connecting all of it into something coherent and continuous, there is love, your love, the love you received and the love you gave, and the love you still carry, and the love that shaped everything, and the love that remains when everything else eventually falls quiet. This is what the night has been moving toward all along. Not the regret, though the regret is real. Not the grief, though the grief is also real and deserves its space. But the love, the soft, persistent, surviving love that has been present in every chapter of your life, in every relationship that mattered, in every moment of genuine connection, in every time you tried. It was always the love. It was always underneath everything else, making everything else possible, giving everything else its meaning. You are, at the end of all of it, someone who loved, someone who tried to love well, someone who is still learning what loving well means, even now, even at this stage of life where you know so much and still find new lessons waiting. Someone who will lie down tonight and close their eyes and carry all that love through the hours of sleep and wake up with it still there, intact, available, ready to be given again in another ordinary, irreplaceable day. That is enough. That is more than enough. That is actually everything. The stillness that holds you. Your body is very heavy now. Notice it. The weight of your arms against the mattress. The way your legs have stopped, searching for a different position and have simply settled. The way your breathing has slowed without you asking it to. Your chest rising and falling at its own pace, gentle and deep, deeper than it was an hour ago. The thoughts are quieter now. They've said what they needed to say tonight. The regret has been acknowledged and held with compassion rather than judgment. The love has been recognized and honored. The people you've been thinking about have been visited in memory, held briefly, and gently released back into the part of you where they always live. Nothing has been resolved because most of these things do not require resolution. They only required your honest attention, your willingness to sit with them in the dark without flinching. You did that tonight. You sat with it all. The room around you is completely still. The sounds of the outside world have softened to almost nothing. Just the occasional distant sound that only makes the silence deeper, like a stone dropped into a very still lake, disappearing into the quiet it disturbed for a moment. You are safe in this room. You are warm in this bed. You have done the work of this long day and this honest, tender hour. You have nothing left to carry tonight except the simple, quiet weight of being alive and at rest. And that weight is not a burden. It is the weight of something real, of a body that is here, of a life that is yours, of a person who matters and has mattered and will continue to matter in the lives of people who love them. Let your shoulders soften completely. If there was any remaining tension in them, release it now. You don't need to hold anything up at this hour. Let the bed hold you. Let the darkness hold you. Let the night do what the night is for. Let your jaw go soft. The effort of the day is over. The effort of the thinking is over. Nothing requires your expression right now. Your face can rest. Your eyes, behind closed lids, can stop moving. You can let everything become still. Breathe in slowly. Feel your chest rise. Hold it for just a moment. The fullness of a breath taken completely. And breathe out, long and slow, feeling your body soften further with the releasing. Feeling the last of the held things let go on the exhale. Again, in slowly. The air cool and easy. The breath effortless. Your body knowing exactly what to do without instruction. And out. Slower this time. All the way out. Until you're empty and quiet and ready for the next breath to arrive on its own, in its own time. Without any effort from you. The love is still there. It doesn't go away when you sleep. It lives in you through the night, through the dreaming, through the early hours before dawn, when you're somewhere between sleeping and waking and everything feels both distant and very close. The love keeps watch. It doesn't need you conscious to exist. The people you love are somewhere tonight, in their own beds, in their own rooms, in their own versions of this same dark and quiet hour. Some of them are sleeping already. Some are awake with their own thoughts. Some are dreaming. All of them are carrying you with them, the way you carry them. The love moves in both directions, across the dark, not requiring wakefulness or awareness, just present, just real, just continuous. You're connected to them right now, across whatever distance separates you, across whatever history complicates the connection, across whatever remains unresolved and unspoken and still in progress. The love is the connection. It doesn't need the complications to be resolved before it can function. It simply is. Rest in that connection now. Feel it like warmth, like the particular warmth of being held in mind by someone who loves you. You are in someone's thoughts tonight. You are someone's important person. You are held by love. You may not always think about, but that has never stopped being real. That thought can carry you into sleep. You don't need to hold on to anything else. You don't need to solve anything, or plan anything, or revisit anything else tonight. Everything has been tended to that needed tending. Everything has been acknowledged, that needed acknowledgement. Everything has been held with the gentleness and honesty it deserved. Now the only thing left is rest. Simple, complete, deserved rest. Let your thoughts slow to the pace of dreams. Let the images that rise be soft and unhurried. Let them carry you somewhere gentle, somewhere safe, somewhere the light is the particular golden light of a good memory, warm and unhurried and yours. You've been awake a long time today. You've carried a great deal. You've thought deeply and honestly and with real tenderness about a life that deserves exactly that. Now the night asks nothing more of you. Not a single thing more. Just this. Just breath. Just the soft darkness. Just the weight of covers. Just the quiet presence of a life resting at last. The soft regret has softened all the way into understanding tonight. The love has spoken in all its forms and been heard. The people you've loved and lost and missed and forgiven and been changed by, they've all had their moment in this hour. They've all been honored. They'll be here tomorrow if you need them again. They always are. But for now, they can rest too. For now, everything can rest. The fires die down, the stories settle, and the world grows still. Let your thoughts drift away like embers on the wind. Good night. You've journeyed far through time tonight. Now it's time to journey into dreams. Close your eyes, breathe, and let sleep find you.